Today on the Coach Loyd podcast, we have a very special guest joining the show today. Super excited to have him join the show. Over 20 years of coaching experience, a lot of success as well. He has a 230 and 162 overall record, including 167 and 93 in conference play since taking over as a head coach at this university. His first year as a head coach at Helm, he took the team to a 24-8 league play record. He got the MEC Coach of the Year award, and he won the MEC title as a team that year. He's taken his team to 2 NCAA Division II World Series appearances at the school and a lot of different things, including 11 conference championships. He's coached a few players who have went off and played in the MLB and just in general to the next the professional league. And so great episode here. A lot of really, really good things that are mentioned here. So make sure you stick around to the end. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Coach Sean Loyd, head baseball coach at West Virginia State University, to the Coaches Why podcast.
With the world of coaching evolving and the carousel always changing, we're going to sit down with some coaches and we're going to figure out what they coach, how they coach, and most importantly, why they got into this profession. My name is Casey Wilkinson, and I am your host of the Coaches Why podcast.
That's a great question.
That was my Coach's Why.
Welcome back to another Coaches Why podcast, guys. We have a very special guest joining the show today. All the way from West Virginia State University, we have Coach Sean Loyd. He is their head baseball coach out there. Coach, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Casey. How are you?
Doing well, man. Thank you very much for joining the show, and I'm super excited to talk baseball with you. I'm a wrestling coach, but I grew up playing baseball, so I always enjoy talking the sport. I always give the baseball coaches here a hard time, always just talking the sport and talking the game. So really looking forward to this and getting to know you a little bit. And so you spent a lot of time out there in West Virginia, both as it looks like you've been out there for majority of your career, at least in that general area. So tell me a little bit about yourself. I mean, where did you grow up? When did you get involved in the sport of baseball? But also, when did you I guess we can just start there, actually. Let's just start there. When did you grow up and when did you get involved in the sport of baseball?
So I grew up in a town called Sutton, West Virginia, which is the geographical center of the state of West Virginia. And, just like anybody else, I mean, my dad was a softball player, a fast pitch softball player. And, I was around that from the time I was able to walk and go with him to those games. And, I was lucky enough to be around a lot of men that played softball and coached baseball and, started playing in Little League and, just kind of, every time I had to jump up, I jumped up a year and just kept on playing and never dreamed in a million years that, this is what I'd be doing for a living.
Absolutely, yeah. It's always interesting sometimes when you don't expect to be doing this and you find your way doing it, especially if you're doing it for a long time, right? And so you graduated from West Virginia State, correct? Okay. You played baseball there, is that correct? Played sports there? Okay. So when did you realize, like, in your high school career, because back, even in my day, right, but AAU and all this perfect game and all this stuff that is in today's world really wasn't, at least in my opinion, maybe it's different, but it isn't what it is now, right? It's, 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, it just wasn't what it is, at least on the highest level. And it might be just because of social media and the rise of being able to have it out in the media. But anyways, how did you realize that you, for one, could go play, baseball or maybe just compete at the next level? And then two, what made you decide to go with West Virginia State out of maybe the other options that you may have, accrued?
Well, we have a thing in West Virginia. It's a North-South All-Star game, and it's only for seniors. Graduated seniors. It's after the high school state tournaments over and all that. And I participated in that, played very well. While I was there, I was a catcher. And the head coach at West Virginia State at the time was Cal Bailey, who's an ABCA Hall of Famer. And, he reached out to me and, gave me an opportunity. And, at the time, he was probably the most well-known baseball person in the state of West Virginia. He's a great coach and great teacher, educator. And it was just an opportunity that, you always want to play for the best team and the best coach. And I had a chance to do that. So I jumped at that chance.
When it comes to West Virginia State, and obviously, it sounds like he gave you the opportunity to actually, get the opportunity to go do that. But when it comes to West Virginia State, I know right now you guys are Division II program. Has it always been Division II? Even when you were there.
No, when I played, we were at AIA.
Okay.
Which a little background on Coach Bailey. He was an ex-military. Uh, he was a professor in the education department. He taught educational philosophy. So he was probably the toughest human being I've ever been around, but also the smartest. And when we were in AIA, there were no practice limitation rules or anything. And I tell my guys all the time, in the fall on Saturday and Sunday, we started at 8 a.m. and stopped at dark. And he gave us a half hour, in the middle of the day to eat a sandwich, but we had to bring a sandwich.
Right.
And, the first 8 hours of practice were fun. It was the last 4 that got you.
Right. Yeah. It's always the
But
ending part.
it was a different world. I mean, it was just, it was a different, those were all old school style coaches, and, they were tough, and, he ran us to death. And, later on, I got an opportunity to coach with him. And, back then his philosophy was, he was going to make practices miserable. So that way games were easier than practice. And, it worked for us. We were a small school, and, our recruiting net had not gotten real wide at that point. So it was a lot of West Virginia kids from rural areas who grew up with really tough dads. So we were all kind of used to it. And, but it was a really good experience. I wouldn't trade it for anything. We would go on our southern trip. So we would go to South Carolina for 11 days, and we didn't have the budget to stay in hotels. So Presbyterian College, at the time, was where we'd go. And we would stay in a team room there. Tim Corbin was the coach at Presbyterian College at the time. And we would stay in a team room with mattresses on the floor. And there were 2 sets of bunk beds, I think. The rest were mattresses on the floor. And we'd bring our own pillow and our own blanket. And, back then there was no cell phones, no internet. And in that team room, there was no radio, no TV, no nothing. So every morning, Coach Bailey, this will give you a little insight to him, 5 a.m., he would wake up and yell, "Pitchers and fat people, we're going to run. Let's go."
Okay.
And at the time, I just thank God I wasn't fat.
That's funny. I mean, I always find it funny whenever you hear, stories about different generations of coaching, right? And being, my coaches were coached differently than I was, right? And all the way down the tree, coaches from the 40s were different than the 60s, and so it's always interesting to hear that. And so like the evolution of having to be a coach, and in order to not only maintain how the game's changing, but also with just how kids are changing. I always find it so intriguing to kind of hear and just see, how coaches can evolve with it, and hopefully find success by doing that. So, you spent a lot of time, as an athlete there, but also now you've been there for a while as a coach. Just to remind, just because I keep saying you've been here for a while, I know because I've I reached out and I know a little bit about your, time from there, but how long have you been at West Virginia State as a coach collectively?
So as soon as I was finished with my eligibility, I'd transferred from another school. As soon as I finished my eligibility, I started coaching. So I was 21 years old. And Coach Bailey said, "You're going to coach the hitters, coach the catchers, and coach third base." And I said, "Well, I've literally never done any of those things." And he said, "Well, you got a lot of work to do to get caught up." So that's how we started. We led the nation in hitting my first year, by the way. So I think we did okay, but we had good hitters. So, I was his assistant coach for 20 years, I think. I had a couple opportunities to leave. Just I didn't think there were better opportunities than what I had being with him. And then there was a stretch there where I became the athletic director at the school. So I spent 8 years as the athletic director, and you know as well as I do, when you start making that coin, um, it's not easy to go somewhere else and take a huge pay cut. So it kind of locked me in. And then my wife and I, we started having kids, and I didn't want to move them from their school ever, once because we live in a really, really good community and a good school. Uh, and West Virginia State's always been home, and I've always been happy there. And I've been the head coach now. This is starting my 12th year as the head coach, and it's been a really good place for me to land. Uh, I love the school, love the people. It's been the only place I've drawn a paycheck since I've been 18 years old. So I've been really fortunate in that regard.
Absolutely, yeah. Spending all that time in one place, sets that tenure, and like you said, you've been doing it at that place since you were 18. So, kind of since you've been there for so long, both as just an athlete, but how it correlated or I should say, yeah, correlated, I guess might be the right term, put together as a coach now. When going back to that conversation about like evolving, right? Like your coaches taught you differently than you did. And now you've been coaching, there since pretty much, the turn of, for the last 20 years, like you said, kind of collectively with everything. So your evolution as you look back at, when you first started, what are some of the biggest evolution changes that you feel like you had to make, to not only stay relevant maybe as a coach, but also as a team and a program, for success, if that, in that regard?
Well, when I first started as an assistant coach, I was young. I mean, there were 5 guys on the team older than me. And I was coaching a bunch of guys that I had played with. So that was an adjustment. But once those guys kind of cycled through, I think it allowed me to kind of develop a little bit more as a coach and being seen as a coach. And of course, I improved as I went along. But you could. It was a little bit easier to be tougher on kids. I think when I first started, even when I first became a head coach, my first team, we won our conference and went to the NCAA tournament my first year. Uh, and I think those guys tried to test me and challenge me a little bit. So I was pretty rough on those guys, and they were a great group of kids, and they played really hard and played really well together. But I mean, I had to sit on them and was pretty rough. Uh, I think one of the things that helped me uh, and continues to help me is once I started having kids, and I have 3 daughters, uh, that kind of changed my perspective a little bit on how I deal with people and how I handle people. It's actually helped me be a better communicator with my players, and not only in the recruiting process, but just day-to-day stuff. Because once you start having kids, you come to the realization, as much as you love your kids, that's how much the parents of your players love them. And, so you have to be mindful of that as you're going through the day to day. And, at our level, you have to be more than just, hitting and pitching and fielding. We obviously are really hard on our guys about the academic piece, and, they have to graduate, but things pop up. And when things pop up, a lot of times, I'm the first contact because, I have kids that are, 17, 18 hours from home, and mom and dad can't get there. So the evolution has been for me the best way to get kids to continue to play hard for you, because back then we played hard out of fear. We were scared to death of what was going to happen. I think now kids will still play hard, and you can still coach kids really, really hard. You can still be demanding. You can lay expectations out there, and if they don't reach the expectations, that there's consequences. You can still do all those things, but here's the key: the kids have to know you care, and they have to know you care more about them as a person than you do as a player. And I think once you have that, and they see what you're about, there's, trust gets developed, and then you have credibility. And if as a coach, if you don't have credibility, it doesn't matter how good a coach you are, you're done. And so me and my whole staff, we spend a lot of time making sure that, we do the things for them to show them that, this is the place you're supposed to be. You're going to be comfortable here. You're going to be pushed. You're going to be challenged. But at the end of the day, you're going to have everything you need. And there's always going to be somebody here to take care of if you need it. And that's important. That's what I would want for my kids.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. That's a crucial piece that's also probably a piece on why they choose to go there. I mean, your success that you've developed is probably another big piece of the getting people in, which we'll get into recruiting here in a little bit. But I think that's also probably a big piece on, when kids feel that and talk to other athletes there, your guys probably sell it just as much as you try or your staff tries for them feeling that. And so, you mentioned you spend a lot of time talking to athletes, or your athletes, I should say, to make them feel comfortable. And like you said, that they feel home there essentially. Whenever you think about that process, and we don't have to dive into like everything that you do, what do you feel like's been the most effective thing that you have evolved with to make them feel that? I know there's a lot of ways, like NIL, especially the NCAA level, is a thing. I know D2 may or may not feel it as much. I mean, I'm not in it, so I can't speak for that. But that is something that you may have to deal with as well. But I guess in general, how have you made people feel at home to make them want to stay amid the transfer portal and all the other things like you're mentioning?
Well, I think it's got to be organic. It can't be mechanical or fake. I just always tell them, when mom and dad or whoever is with them on their recruiting visit, I always tell them I can't promise playing time, but I can make you two promises. He's going to graduate, and we're going to take care of him. And then from that point forward, like I said, it's organic. You just got to show them. You can't, you can't just walk around and say, hey, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. You just have to show them when they need something. I always tell them, I need to be your first phone call. If something goes wrong, I need to be your first phone call. And, I think my track record with guys that have played for me, they'll tell the other guys, hey man, he's serious. If you need something, he's going to do everything he can to help you. So I just think you have to be, sincere and be genuine and just do your thing. And, at the end of the day, it'll all get conveyed the way it's supposed to be at a good natural pace.
Very important piece there. I appreciate you diving into that a little bit. And so, you mentioned earlier a little bit about how that coach, you had opportunities to leave, but you chose not to because you didn't feel like it was going to pan out or wasn't going to be better than what you've already had. And so something that kind of stuck out, and you can reference because of the coach that you were coaching under. It might be, you'll understand what I mean, but you can reference him or it could be any other coach. But whenever you think about all of your coaches in your career, whether they were, you were the head coach and they were your, assistants or vice versa, as an athlete, whatever the case is, when you think about like an influential coach in your life, who were they and what did they teach you?
Coach Bailey, taught me about being prepared, making sure that I studied. As a young coach back then, we had to get information in different ways. So I read a lot, watched a lot of VHS videos. Kids now don't even know what that is. But, he just taught me that, if I want to be a coach, I got to work at it. A lot of and I think this is an important thing too for young coaches. I mean, a lot of times you can observe all different types of coaches and all different kinds of sports. And, you can learn things that you want to do or you want to implement, but a lot of times you learn what you don't want to do and what you don't want to be like. And so I always observe coaches, and I had really good coaches coming up through like Little League and middle school and high school. I just had real good coaches. Good people and, people that taught us all a certain kind of work ethic, and those are important to me. I've had friends, Lawrence Nesselrode, who's the head coach at West Virginia University Tech, learned a lot from him. So I've been lucky to be around coaches. Like my three best friends were all coaches. And two of them in high school, one of them in college. And brilliant coaches. So our men's basketball coach at West Virginia State's a great coach. I'm throwing stuff off the wall with him all the time. So, I've always, one of the things Coach Bailey taught me is it's what you learn after you know it all that really matters. So I think that, as coaches, we can't ever think we have it all figured out. We do have to be lifelong learners and lifelong studiers. And, because baseball, as you know, I mean, you're never going to see it all. There's always going to be something come up and you're going to be like, I've never seen that before. So I'm smart enough to know that I don't know it all. And that's probably been the thing that's helped me stay competitive and want to continue to coach, because I know there's more out there for me to learn and more out there for me to learn how to teach my guys. And yeah, that's why I think baseball is the greatest sport in the world.
You mentioning how, you have that growth mentality, how even though you've been doing it for a long time, you still know that you can grow and learn and stuff to, yourself to learn to then pass it along. And I love that statement, especially because you've been doing this for a long time, especially a coach like you who has found success, who has done this for a while. You may find some people, and I haven't met anybody like this, so maybe I'm lucky, but that could probably get in that little ego, like I've been doing this for so long, right, type of thing. And so you having the mentality that you want to continue to learn is, I think, huge. And like you said, that's the only way you're going to continue success is to have that. So I can definitely appreciate that. And yeah, the baseball conversation about, the greatest sport in the world. I love baseball. I would say that. I grew up as a team sport guy, and then evolved into like individual sports. And I think I love them both. They each have a love in my own heart. One of them, wrestling is an individual, but / team sport, you can't win a baseball game without good teammates. So it's like they both have a love in my own heart, and I can understand where that comes from, at least in my time frame playing
Well,
sports.
I can tell you, some of the best baseball players I've ever had were wrestlers in high school. And the reason I like them is they're tough mentally, because as a wrestler, and I guess this rings true for just about any individual sport, but I think wrestling more than any, there's no one to blame. If you don't win, you can't look at somebody and go, "Hey man, you really let me down there." I mean, there's no one to blame. It's on you. And I think that being exposed to that over a long period of time, you have to develop some inner strength and some toughness there that some of the other sports don't offer. You don't get it with some of the other sports. Now I've tried to grow some inner strength through golf, but it's not working out so well for me. So,
hey, but you know what though? Them shanks that you have to the left or right really build some character though, because you have to decide if you want to continue doing this or not. So
yeah, 100%. Or if you can afford to continue to do it or not.
That too. Those golf balls are not cheap. Tees are not cheap.
Not.
And just you halfway through, you rent, or should say you get a tee time for 9 holes or the whole thing, and you're only 3 holes in. You're like, I don't know if I want to continue this. So not only financially, but mentally too. So I can understand that. Yeah, and so I can appreciate having both. Love for both and appreciating of both, I should say, and maybe what you get from both. I think the multi-sport athlete conversation in today's world is different from whenever I was in school, and maybe even you as well. I know you played multiple sports, at least I think that's what I was able to read up on, and I did multiple sports too. And I feel like most kids may do that same thing, but I feel like I played all 3 sports as I graduated high school. I had my 3 sports as I was, and I feel like in today's space, you might see that up until like that sophomore, junior year, but I feel like senior year, you may have a little bit of a fall off. I mean, football to track maybe, right? Or maybe football to baseball type of thing. You might see some kids who are doing one or the other, but you ideally though, what I'm getting to is I feel like you see a little bit more specialization or focusing on that particular sport. And I know there's always a conversation of, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Right? Burnout, blah, 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 whatever argument you may want to have for that. But In your perspective, you've been doing this for a few years, right? Of coaching and being around the sport, and you said that you've recruited athletes who are baseball players, but they wrestle too. So what I'm getting to is, what do you think? What's your take on that multi-sport athlete, and how do you feel like the focusing or specializing, I should say, has affected? I mean, maybe not all sports, because I know you kind of do it primarily with the baseball, but in your particular, do you feel like it's been, like, you found, like, I wouldn't say even, maybe not even more success, because I know success is in a lot of different, probably a lot of variables that can go into that, but multi-sport athlete specialization, what have you seen in the transition in the last decade or so, and how do you feel about kids who want to specialize versus are multi-sport?
Well, I don't think there's a right or wrong. I do like kids that play multiple sports because you know there's some skills that I think they develop there, especially if you play football. I mean, football's there's got to be an element of toughness to you to be able to play football or wrestle. Uh, I've had kids that were golfers. There's some mental toughness that comes with that if they're trying to be good. Basketball, there's a lot of athleticism, things that come into play. I like kids that play multiple sports. However, I do think that kids that have the right mentality and the right mindset, if they decide they just want to specialize in baseball, I think it can be good for those kids too. Burnout is a real thing. So I think as a parent, you have to be careful about, just the mentality of your kid. But if it's something that they're passionate about, that they have a burning desire to be good at it, then, I don't think there's anything wrong with specializing in just baseball and going to the, baseball specific type of training and going to a hitting coach or a pitching coach, and going to camps and clinics and showcases. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I think that the only thing you have to be careful with is you have to make sure that your kid is really passionate about doing that sport, because if not, then that's where the burnout comes.
Right. Yeah, I can definitely understand that. Being smart as a parent and just even as an athlete, hopefully starting to feel those things. I think being able to speak on those things to your parent or to your coach is important, which I know not a lot of kids are comfortable speaking like that. They feel like they have to be super strong or whatever, and I know they may feel like they're going to get crap talked to, and maybe they do if they have a bad coach or a coach who's not willing to understand where they're coming from, but I can definitely understand how important that part of it is. You've been around the sport enough, like I mentioned earlier about the PG and all this, these AAU or travel ball and stuff like that. And I always feel like this might be a hot topic too, just because the pay to play aspect in American sports, and just where it has gone from 10, 15, 20 years ago from origination is it's huge, right? And it's monumentous, and a lot of money is involved. So correlating kind of the conversation we're just on about the pitching coaches and stuff like that, how do you feel about the whole world of travel ball and or perfect game and the showcases and stuff like that? I've heard some compelling arguments that I really didn't think about up until that point. I talked about, and they kind of correlated, or I kind of put it together with wrestling. Like you may not have the time to go watch high school baseball games just all the time, right? You just don't have the time. Your season's their season. But you might be able to go to a showcase and see X amount of kids that you want to recruit or you've heard about or whatever, all in one place. And I kind of put that in correlation to like a wrestling tournament where I might not be able to go watch a small high school tournament or a duel or something, but there's a big state tournament or a big event going on, and I can go watch X amount of athletes at one time. So it took me some time to really think about that, because I feel like travel ball and stuff was kind of hurting the game, maybe more on the youth side, and maybe not when you get to that 13, 14, 15 range, but that 8U, 6U, 10U, like travel ball, and how I've seen parents fight at this type of stuff, right? And anyways, the whole nother podcast topic, but how do you feel, or I should say we could have a whole nother episode on it, but how do you feel about where it sits and how important do you feel like it is if a kid wants to go to the next level?
I think there's a lot of variables to it. All three of our daughters played travel ball. We had a couple years there where all three of them were playing at one time softball. Uh, so it put a lot of stress on us just trying to get them where they're supposed to be. Obviously, there's a cost associated to it. I mean, if I were coming up now, my parents wouldn't have been able to afford for me to play on a travel team. It's just too expensive. Um, they wouldn't have been able to afford to send me to hitting lessons or catching lessons. It's just too expensive. So um, I think that it's a tough one because I think that 8 years old is too young. I think anything below 12 is too young. I really do. Uh, there's some really good aspects to travel ball because you get an opportunity to theoretically you get an opportunity to play against good competition. Okay, that's one thing. The kids get an opportunity to travel a little bit, see the country a little bit, get exposed to some different things. So there's a social aspect to it. Uh, but I think by and large, the difference between travel ball and school ball is if you're the travel ball coach and I paid $800 for my kid to play, he better be playing some this weekend.
Absolutely.
So I don't know that we're teaching them that they have to earn their spot, which I know that's not what travel ball was designed for either. Um, the other thing is um, there's not really consequences if you don't play well because you don't go to school and hang out. You don't have to face your teammates every day knowing that, I let a ground ball go through my legs and we got beat. Uh, and then, you go to the travel ball tournament and you're guaranteed 6 games. Uh, so you get beat 20-2 the first game. You get beat 15-1 the second game, and then you go to Dave and Buster's, uh, and party on, and then, hey guys, we got 2 more tomorrow. Let's, give it our best shot. Just that's kind of not how, high school and college baseball works. So, but I do think that it is good, to be able to have the opportunity to play a lot of games on a weekend. Uh, but because of that, the travel ball coaches are so rushed. So if I have a travel ball team and, I've got kids from, 15 kids from 12 different communities, we're probably only going to have the opportunity to have a good practice once a week, and then we're playing. So I think a lot of the travel ball coaches are good coaches. They probably have a good background, but they just don't have the opportunity to be able to show them how to make the turn at first base. So I think kids miss out a little bit on some fundamentals that they might be able to get if they played for a local team that got to practice, 3 times a week and that sort of thing. And I certainly wouldn't try to disparage travel ball because there's a ton of good that comes out of it. There's a ton of good that comes out of playing for a local American Legion team. But I think there's drawbacks for both as well. So, I think that from you always hear the word exposure. Well, he's going to play travel ball so he can get exposure. Well, I get it. I do. I get it. But I think that's what showcases are for, our exposure. And I also believe that if you can play, they're going to find you. You I mean, I've gotten kids that I was in competition for with 8, 9, 10 other coaches. That's hometown's not as big as my kitchen, and it's out in the middle of nowhere. But we all found him. So I anytime kids are playing baseball, I think it's a good thing. Um, I don't think there's going to be any situation for summer baseball, whether it be American Legion, travel, or whatever. I don't think there's ever going to be a scenario where it's just perfect and everything's exactly the way it's supposed to be. And I think both have a good place and serve a good purpose. And, I think, as a parent, we were fortunate enough to be able to to provide our kids with the ability to play. And for my girls, it really helped them in a lot of different ways other than just being a softball player. So I would have to assume that the same effect would happen with young boys as they're trying to develop and play. So I don't have any qualms with travel ball. Don't have any qualms with American Legion or anything like that, because it provides us an opportunity to see kids play games. And more often than not, most of the people, their intentions are genuine and their intentions are good to try to help the kids. The problem, in my experience with travel ball as a parent in travel ball, it's the issues are always more, parents having vicarious experiences through their kids. If you can keep that in check, it's actually, it's a good atmosphere. And, we, as parents, the benefits is you meet friends, you get a chance to meet people you may not have otherwise, known, and they become friends. And, then you start following each other's kids and what they're doing and their endeavors. So there's a lot of benefits to it. I think the drawbacks are minimal.
Right.
Yeah, I think there is a lot. I mean, you brought up the social aspect. I think that's a great piece of it. I think that's something that you wouldn't experience, just playing at your local league. I think it's hard. I think the biggest two things, or maybe three, is one, like you mentioned, the parents. I think that's always, it might not just be baseball. I mean, I know wrestling's like that too, so I know that's a just youth sports thing. But the financials is definitely a big one too, especially in today's world, how much it costs. Some places are per tournament, some of them are per season. But I think the last one too that I really find intriguing, or maybe is important as well, is I think it's, and maybe this is just particular areas type of thing, but I do know that there's travel ball teams who play in rec league summer baseball. And I feel like that is pretty hard because, and maybe it's just me, and maybe it's just because I've seen it. My kid was in that situation. He was on kind of like the travel ball B team last year. He wasn't the main travel ball team, but he played, under that same organization. But the main travel ball team, they were the best team in the league, and they were dominating every single team. They beat a team like 30-0 basically. And then my kids' team went to play them, and they wouldn't play a team called they wouldn't play that organization at all because they didn't like how that travel ball team, tore up their rec ball team. So I think that's also a negative in its own regard, because then it makes kids not want to enjoy. It's hard for the kid to enjoy their time, which, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, there's going to be beatings that happen. I mean, that's just what youth sports are. You're going to experience that at some point, and that's just how sports are. But for a rec league team to be, or a tournament or travel ball or whatever, to continually, beat up on all the other rec teams is kind of hard for the other kids to actually enjoy that. So I think that the rec ball league and all that stuff is very intriguing conversation. You could have multiple episodes on just talking about this, all the positives and everything like that. And so, but yeah, I do agree. I think, like you said, there's a lot of pros to it. There are some cons to it, but either way, it's getting kids to play the sport. And like you said, exposure happens regardless if you continue to play and you do all the right things. So that's absolutely a good call there. One question that kind of popped in my mind right before I brought up, for some reason, I didn't ask you beforehand, but about your challenges you face, right? So I was going to ask this before we got into the whole youth sports and everything, but you've been doing this for a while, and so I mentioned this because we talked a little bit about your evolution, but you've also probably had some challenges that you faced in a general aspect, whether it's a year-to-year thing or maybe, from, was it like 95, 96, somewhere in that ballpark when you first started to now. There's probably challenges in regards to, just that time frame. So what are some challenges that you faced, not on the recruiting side, but just as a coach? And I know you mentioned one earlier about, when you were that young kid, having to coach the kids you played with, it's probably difficult as well. But besides that one, what are some challenges you might have faced at any point that you remember, and to where now you don't have to face them as much, or now you know how to overcome them or overcome them, if they ever were to come back or ever had to experience that again?
Well, I think personally, just in coaching, my biggest challenge when I first started coaching was I couldn't express myself in any other way other than screaming and yelling. I didn't have a lot of patience. Uh, and because of that, early in my career, the guys that I coached early in my career when I was, in my early 20s, didn't really develop any kind of relationship with those guys because, uh, I wasn't equipped at the time. So I think just maturing helped me and learning how to talk to people and uh, learning how to be able to adequately communicate what I need and what I'm trying to get out of them was probably the biggest thing that helped me. But at a Division II school at our size, the challenge is always going to be finances and raising money and being able to get the necessary things that your program needs to be able to operate, on a regular basis, but also being able to go out and raise funds and do some things that maybe they didn't think was on the radar, but we got it done. Like we raised money, we turfed our infield. 2 years ago, I decided that the dugouts that we had that were built in 1977 were probably adequate for the size of players. Human beings were just smaller back then, but they didn't have as many. So, we raised 150 and built brand new dugouts. So, just being able to um, get the basic needs that the players have, but also get some extra things that make a difference, not only in recruiting, but just the self-worth of your program and the people that are in it. Being able to play on a turf field and being able to, have new huge dugouts and that sort of thing. And we're continually trying to, uh, do things to improve our situation. And you can't do it all at once. And uh, my oldest daughter, is an accountant in the athletic department at the University of Texas. Funding is not an issue there. Uh, they don't have the same wish list that I have. So, and being, having the financial challenges, then the next challenge is being able to learn and to grow as a fundraiser and learning how to do that, because that's a whole different, set of circumstances, and you're dealing with uh, types of people that coaches don't always come into contact with on a day-to-day basis, and learning how those people talk and how they think, and uh, you know getting comfortable in those settings. That's a challenge. It was a challenge for me, and I had to really learn when I became an athletic director, because that's where I spent the biggest part of my time. So anytime you coach at the Division II level, there's tons of challenges. It's just you can't get bogged down when something doesn't go your way a certain way. You've got to figure out a different way while you're still working on three other things over here. Uh, and I just always maintain, when I have an idea that's something that I want to do, I don't put a timeline on it. I don't say I'm going to get this done in 6 months, because I have no control over that, and until we start bringing the money in. So I don't tip my hand and tell people, "Hey, we're going to have this before you graduate," because if it takes longer than I thought, then I just lied to you. So I just we try to make little improvements or big improvements when we have the opportunity, and little improvements when we have the opportunity, and just to kind of, my whole thing is to try to, let's just keep moving forward. Let's just keep improving. And if you can improve in every aspect every year, from the coaches coaching better, communicating with the players better, getting better players, our team GPA going up, we win more games, we build new dugouts. If we can just continually start stacking those up after a 5-year period, if you start, doing the math, you've done a good job. And it's a pride thing. I think all coaches are prideful people, and we want to do what's best for our guys, because That means we're going to continue to be able to get good guys, and people are going to want to come and watch us play. And, high school teams might want to use our facility, that sort of thing. So and it just kind of perpetuates itself. But I think fundraising for a Division II head coach is probably the biggest challenge right now, because, we're not throwing NIL money at people. So we've got to come up with other creative ways to attract qualified student athletes to come to our school. And, that can come in a lot of different forms, but, and that's just the taste or the wants or the needs of the head coach. But fundraising is a challenge. Building stuff's a challenge. Materials are not cheap right now. So I think concrete's like $130 a square foot or something. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's definitely not cheap. Actually, our baseball program right now is they're currently rebuilding their dugouts too. So I'm hearing through the grapevine how expensive it is for these dugouts to be built, and so I can understand that piece of it.
We spent $150K on 2 new dugouts. That was turnkey. That's tearing the old ones down and building the new ones, and they're huge.
I feel like fundraising is a difficult thing, which we won't really. We don't have to get into as much right now about fundraising, but I do find fundraising an interesting topic that maybe I'll start asking on the returnees questions, because I think it's interesting. Just fundraising is such a big thing, and I feel like, like you said, Texas and some of those big Power Fours, they don't have any issue with funding. It's the D2 and D3, or maybe D3. I don't know. There's some programs that probably don't have the issue. I've seen some Wisconsin, like that UW whole little metric up there. They got some money. But the idea is, I feel like you're right. I feel like fundraising is a pretty big piece of growth that coaches have to figure out a way to find success. And partially, I bet, is when you start winning, people want to bid into it more. But also, having the right guys who. I'm not saying you're recruiting financially that they have money, but the idea that you have, guys who are willing to put in the work for, if I don't know, every coach is different, but I'm sure you have something maybe where the guys are communicating with community or with family or something. So having guys who are willing to put in that work financially for themselves, so they'll see that money, is also important too. So I'm sure that's a huge piece of how that maneuvers. So let me ask this part. So you've probably seen, well, maybe, I don't know, you might have evolved your athletic schemes every year, or from when you started to now, like just drills and stuff like that, on the level of whether it's technical stuff or whatever it is, right? There's something you've probably evolved from, when you first started to now. So what is an overrated drill? So I guess you can answer both, but what's an overrated and an underrated drill / technique in the sport of baseball?
I don't know, because I think that, like, my background is hitting, and hitting is certainly, the way it's being taught has changed a lot since I first started coaching hitting, but now it's kind of slowly going back to the way it was when I first started coaching hitting. Right. I think that, I've always been like in the cage and in practice and stuff, especially inside, when we have to be inside, we spend a lot of time on like the functional swing, the mechanic of the swing and all that. But I think you have to be careful, because I think teaching hitting in and of itself can be overtaught, because I'm a firm believer in paralysis through analysis. And if you start, trying to be very deliberate with your actions or your movements or whatever, you're going to take away some of your natural, authentic ability. I've always been the type of coaches, I try to figure out what you do well. And whatever it is you do well, I want to try to accentuate that the best I can. And then the things that you don't do well, we got to start with the low-hanging fruit. What's going to be the easiest thing that we could probably correct? Let's get on that right now and get it done. So, I think that the most overcoached part is probably the mechanical part. The most undercoached part is the mental part. hitters or pitchers. And right now I'm coaching pitchers, and I'm probably at a point in my career where I enjoy that more because I have to work at it. But I spend more time right now talking to my guys just about mentally, arming themselves with confidence, finding what verbal cues they have for each thing that they need to do, hit on those verbal cues and execute. And so we spend a lot of time just talking about the mental side of what you're doing. Because a lot of times it's not your bad swing or your bad windup, it's your bad thoughts. You're thinking about the wrong thing. You're being a futuristic thinker, and you're trying to think about the result before you've even done the process yet. So, I think, and I think some coaches are guilty, and I think that a lot of times it's the people that, man, I'm gonna make some people mad. I think it's the people that give the lessons and stuff. Uh, especially if they're younger. I don't know, maybe, but it's. I think they spend a lot of their time trying to prove to the kid how smart they are,
Yeah.
rather than trying to show the kid how good they can be. Uh, I'm always mindful of that. It doesn't matter if my players think I'm smart or not. What matters is, can I convey to them a message or a tactic or a strategy that's going to help them improve as a player? And I've had a couple good coaches that I didn't think were very smart overall, but man, when it came to coaching me, they spoke my language and could get on my level for me to help me improve. Maybe that means I'm not very smart, but I think that we overcoach the mechanical and the physical part, and I do think we undercoach just the mental part. With hitters, I don't coach third base during the games anymore, so I stay in the dugout. So I have the opportunity to talk to hitters as they get ready to go in the on deck circle and all that. Uh, and I'll say something just as simple as, just look for something elevated and just make sure you're trying to hit the ball back up the middle, because those are two things they haven't thought of. Probably what they're thinking: if I get a fastball, I'm going to smash it. Well, what kind of fastball? Knee high inside? You couldn't hit that with a boat oar. So you're going to swing at that. So
Yeah.
I think just getting them mentally, as well as you can, give them some good mental cues that are going to help them be able to execute, on time and properly. That's undercoached, and I'm guilty of it. Everybody's guilty of it.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a really good point. Trying to get kids and fall into the habit of trying to show them that you know what you're talking about versus just the other way. And so, I love the verbal cues remark or reference there. I think that's. I mean, I'll be honest. I talk confidence and try to get them to trust themselves. And I have my own little things that we talk about. Trust yourself. We go all in. We have different little kind of catchphrases or whatever that we talk about for them to get their confidence up, and that they talk about before we go out and wrestle. But it's more of the in moment stuff that you're actually right. I actually don't really. I mean, I talk about wrestling is kind of a game of feel. Yeah, I talk about we should have a script. We should know. We should visualize when we see it. We should take it. What we're reacting to how they come. How they're reacting to our offense is how we're gonna find a way to score from their reaction or whatever. Right? We talk about those things, but like what's going on in your brain in the moment, or what's your thought process, or what words are going through your head, right? Or whatever the case that you're talking about. So I actually really like that. That's something that I haven't really thought about, really, the in wrestling thoughts. It's more of how to prepare for the proper thoughts when you're there. But that's also the thing too, like you said, right? Like this pitcher can come out and start, and baseball's different than wrestling, obviously, with pitching and everything, going 9 innings or whatever. I know there's some games that are 7 or whatever. Maybe not so much college, but in general. But the idea is like, I never really thought of that. So I appreciate you touching base about that, because that's super undercoached, like you said, and I'm guilty of that too.
We all are. We constantly, though, telling our kids, trust your training and be yourself. Trust your training, be yourself. So that way it should give them a mental picture of being able to go back, trust my training. Well, this is what he worked on me with. And he said, this is what it looks like when I'm natural, because we looked at the video. So I'm going to trust this training. I'm going to be myself. And, I'm a Steeler fan. And it's interesting, with Mike Tomlin, stepping down, they talk about his Tomlinisms and all that. But, he said that he likes to speak in metaphors because they can relate to that and it's going to resonate and it's going to stick. The way he presents it, more than saying you have to do X, Y, or Z to be able to execute this block or to be able to tackle a guy. So, we talk in metaphors a lot, analogies, try to speak their language. I have kids from the city. I have kids from way back in the woods. So, 1 minute I'm talking to a kid about, hey, you bow hunt, right? Yeah, I bow hunt. So when you pull the bow back, do you pull it back really fast or you pull it back slow? Well, I pull it back slow. Okay, well, that's how you load up to get ready to hit. That's the speed you want to think about, is how you're pulling the bow back. So you have to be able to, talk in a lot of different languages for kids to try to reach them. And that may be the one thing. It may not even make a difference, but it very well could be the one thing that helps them turn the corner. And you never know what's what.
Right. Yeah. No, that's huge, and I think that's actually a really good conversation piece, because you mentioned, that could be the one thing that turns a corner for them athletically, or whatever case could be, even just maybe like a mental, they're struggling outside of the sport, and you might have a conversation with them that brings something up in a metaphor, and it kind of changes the way they're thinking too. So it could be not only for the sport, but outside of it too. But, you mentioned how just that type of breakdown can kind of turn somebody's season around. Maybe they're in a slump or whatever, pitchers going slumps, hitters going slumps, all that stuff. But how do you get a kid to develop from, I know in high school, like there's like the JV, and I guess there are some colleges out there who have some JV teams too. But the idea is that, the kid who comes in who is a freshman, or maybe is a transfer kid, who's a freshman, sophomore, or whatever, their goal is ultimately to start, but they're not there yet. So how do you develop a kid, kind of a two-piece? How do you develop a kid to get there? And then also, where do you start? And I know that's a loaded question, I'm sure, because there's a lot of variables that go into that. They may not develop the way that you hoped. Their bodies may not take the weight or the strength and conditioning program you're doing, whatever the case is. I know there's a lot of variables, but kind of on a more layman's or general term, where do you start with development, and then where do you go from there, essentially? How do you get a kid to go from that bench player to that starter?
Well, first of all, the kid's got to want to, as you know, and that's where we start, is their makeup. Do they have some want to about them? Are they a hustler? Are they teachable? Do they like to be coached? Those are the first two things we look at. If they have those two things, uh, they probably have some good skill. They probably have one tool that they do really well, or we wouldn't have recruited them in the first place. So we know we've got that in the bag. So anytime that they're not doing well, we try to go back to that so they can get some taste of success. But then you hone in on the things that they're not good at, and you just try to knock them down one at a time. And especially with our young guys that do need work, I don't want to move on to the next thing till I feel like they've really mastered the first thing, and then we go to the next thing. And I tell my guys all the time, not everybody learns at the same rate. Not everybody picks things up as quick as other people, and that's okay. I always tell my guys, I am very patient with how quickly you improve. And we always say, it doesn't matter when you get it, you just got to get it. At some point, you got to get it. I don't care when, you just got to get it. And so I think that takes some heat off of them. But every kid wants to play, and they want to play now. I think kids more so now than in years past, they have a lot more trouble honestly evaluating themselves. So you got to help them with the evaluation part without crushing them. You can't just come up and go, hey, man, you suck at this. You suck at this. I don't know when you're going to play. But, once they are able to see themselves up against maybe some of the older kids on the team, that gives them an opportunity to say, hey, I've got some work to do if I'm going to be able to do those things. And as coaches, we've got to be able to, A, give them the right information, and B, give them that right information in a way that they understand it. So our teaching tactics are going to be different for every kid because kids learn differently. Some kids are visual learners, some kids are auditory learners, some kids are kinesthetic learners. So not everybody learns the same. So we have to hone in on that as coaches, and we have to be good at identifying how they learn best and structuring things in that way, to give that kid the best chance to improve and get better. I want them all to play. I really do. But, I can only play 9 at a time, and I'm not going to play anybody if they're not ready. And I can't remember the guy's name. He used to be the baseball coach at Louisiana, the Raging Cajuns. And I think he passed away a few years ago. But he always told kids, you'll play when I tell you that you're going to play. And until you play, you got to work while you wait. And you got to be willing to work while you wait. And I wish it was Tony something. I can't remember his last name, but fascinating interview when he was talking about that, because a lot of kids don't want to work while they wait because they've never had to wait. All through Little League and everything they've played, and now all of a sudden they're not playing, and it's hard. It's frustrating for them because they've always been playing. So, keeping them hungry and, making sure you praise them when they do have success, and just so much, just saying a little thing like, hey man, 2 weeks ago you couldn't do this.
Yep.
And look at you now. You did it in a scrimmage environment here in the fall, and you did it perfectly. So let's build on this, because I'm a firm believer if they do it once, it's up to us and them to figure out how to get them to do it all the time.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. By the way, that coach's name was Tony Robichaux.
That's it. My wife just said the same thing. She must have looked it up because I know she didn't have that. She didn't have that info.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, she didn't have that one looked up. Yeah. I also looked it up too. Not gonna lie to you. I was trying to think. I couldn't think for some reason who it was, but yeah, okay. But all right. So we're on the same page. Thanks, wife.
You need to watch that. It's awesome. He's unbelievable.
I will. Yeah, I'm always down to listen to that. Especially, I feel like the older school coaches, like from a long time ago, who have spent a lot of time. Like, it's so interesting, right? Like, and I don't know why. Maybe it's just I literally just thought of this as you were talking, but like, it's so interesting because I take, how I approach conversations with kids, both on the personal level, but maybe not on the personal level, but kind of when we have those conversations that we need to have, right? Positive feedback, negative feedback, whatever, but also like the team, trying to get them like, your pregame speeches or postgame speeches or week leading up, whatever it is. But like the coaches from a long time ago, like they didn't have that. They just had to think of this, and they really had to like develop a true skill of motivation on how they got it, right? And so like I feel like nowadays, which is fine, like we all have our own like little motivational stuff. I've said some stuff from the heart, and the girls all felt it, right? And previously at the high school level, like they've felt, the conversations I've had with them. But like that's not every single day, right? Like there's like let me preface this. Obviously I talk to them and give them motivation and talk to them and what's necessary, but there's also a lot of times that I might be talking to them every day, but like 30% of that speech is mine. I took little pieces from other people that fit what I'm trying to talk about and put it into it, right? And so, like what you mentioned about Tony, or like what you mentioned about the cues, or like even just now you talked about you don't care how long it takes, but you got to find a way to get there, right? So like it's just interesting that out of all the you talk to a lot of coaches, you hear they speak, you hear the Nick Sabans and the I don't know. There's so many different coaches out there, right? Coach Bear Bryant back in the day, Bama, and the TCU coaches and Vanderbilt coaches and all these high-level coaches talking stuff, and they got it from somebody. I would assume there's something that they inquired, right? So long story short, I just find it intriguing how these all of us coaches are kind of taking pieces and integrating. There we go. I don't know why I stuttered there. Integrating it into our natural conversations we have with them. So I don't know. I brought that up, but I think maybe because you're referencing Tony, but I just find it intriguing how we all want the same thing, but we're just taking pieces from what I say or what you say and kind of throwing it into your own world to make it make sense, which kind of what you said earlier too, finding other sports and coaches you might learn from.
Yeah, and I think that like when I'm watching baseball games and stuff in the summertime, uh, I always find myself I'm jumping up and running in, getting the legal pad, and then rewinding when it's something somebody said. When they've done a quick interview, or if it's a former player that's doing the broadcast or something like that. So, and I do the same thing, like you said. I take pieces of stuff. I do more speeches before practice and after practice. I think I've given one pregame speech since I've been a head coach, and I try to keep my postgame speeches to 90 seconds or less because they're ready to go anyway. The longer we stay there, I'm just going to get mad if it didn't go well. And I'm not good 10 minutes after the game anyway, win or lose. I'm not very good. So I try to keep it at 90 seconds or less, get my thoughts about me. Then when we come back to practice the next day, that I'm able to give them a well thought out, good, talk that's going to be beneficial and not just beating them down. Here's what I know about kids: when they don't play well, they already know that. So if you're going to get in that post game huddle and start screaming and cussing and yelling, and I'm not saying I haven't done that before, uh, but it doesn't make them feel better, and it damn sure doesn't make me feel better. So I've tried to uh, I try to keep things in perspective, uh, and make sure that when I'm saying something, I'm being responsible with what I'm saying as it relates to them as players. So I have a book that I keep on my desk. Anytime I hear a good quote or read a good quote, I write it in this book. And my book is aptly titled "Quotes and Messages." So I'll
That
if we're
works.
and if we hit a point in the season where I think we need something, I start getting in this book, and I'll find quotes from Pat Riley, or I used a quote the other day from the wrestling coach at Iowa, Dan.
Dan Gable.
Yeah, Dan Gable. So there's stuff everywhere that you can use, and coaches that say them don't care because they put it out there, and I think coaches by and large all want to help one another anyway. And so I refer to that book all the time. Now I mark and date each time I use one of those, so I'm not 3 weeks later I think I've really hit on
Same
something,
thing.
and I forgot that I gave that to them on the 10th, and now it's the 23rd and they're getting it again. So I want to try to make sure I'm fresh. But yeah, it's you know it, you would be shocked how much kids pay attention to what you say when you give it to them in the right environment. Right after a game is not a good time for anybody, really.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
not a good time for anybody. And in baseball, I really don't want to give them some kind of talk that's going to get them all revved up, because baseball's not played like that. And a lot of times I'm doing them a disservice. I'm going to hurt them more than help them. And before games, I kind of, that's their time, because everybody has their own way to get themselves ready to play. And, me having a team meeting before that might disrupt somebody and how they're getting themselves ready. So that's why we tell our guys the practice belong to the coaches, the games belong to the players. And, if you screw up my practice, I'm going to screw up your game. And if you screw up your game, I'm really going to screw up my practice.
Circle of life. Circle of
Yeah,
life.
yeah.
I like it. Yeah.
So I'm always mindful of what their how they spend their time in the moments before they get ready to play, and I think that's important for them. And it's probably some type of ritual or thing they've been doing since they were 14 or 15 years old, and they think it helps them. And whether it does or not, it doesn't matter. If they think it does, then it does. So, I don't do a lot of pregame stuff.
Yeah, that's fair. No, I like that, especially knowing that the game's not played like that, knowing that getting them hyped up right there doesn't do anything for them necessarily. So I like that. I really.
And I'm a nervous wreck myself. So,
Right.
the last thing I need them to see is how nervous I am. So, I keep my mouth shut and stay to myself.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I'm the same way, especially tournaments. Not so much duels when it's just us versus another team. I'm always more nervous, regardless if I know we're gonna win or not. Well, regardless if I think we should win or not. There's no guarantee, but if I know that we're gonna be, I know that we're in a position to probably win this duel just because of whatever the case is. So in wrestling, it's almost like there's some teams that don't have a full squad, so they only have there's 10 or 11 weight classes. They may only have 4 or 5, right? And so by and large, they forfeit more than they have. So no matter what happens, we're going to win that duel, right? Which isn't really a proper way of wanting to win, but that's just how the game is. Sometimes is they don't have the amount of people because of injuries or recruiting, whatever it is. And so, but even though I know we're going to win at the end of the day, we still have 4 or 5 wrestlers who are going to wrestle. And so they don't need to see that, but I'm definitely nervous even, in that regard. So I appreciate that because I play it cool, let them think like, no, I've been here. I tell them, act like you've been here before, whether you have or you haven't, right? Like we're a JUCO, so I coach at a 2-year school. So, some of these girls haven't been here before, literally because they're freshmen, but also some of the sophomores didn't get the experience that as a freshman. So, but I tell them, hey, act like you've been here before. And I have to try to maintain that too. Like, yeah, maybe this was my first college duel as a college coach, but I've been in duels before. You don't know how nervous I am, and I'm sweating through the shirt, but hell, I'm going to act like I know what this is about, So I agree, knowing, I learned this from one of my old coaches. Timing is everything, and knowing when to say these things is important. I have some really, really good ones that I love to say. Like one of my favorite things to say, really 2 quotes is one, comparison's the thief of joy. I live by that now because I try not to compare myself to others. But the other one, especially for wrestling, wrestling practices are hard, and I'm sure you may have some hard practices too. I know winter camps usually suck. I'll be honest. I know winter camps are usually not the funnest time in the world for baseball, but I always like to tell my kids, you have to hate losing more than you hate practice. And knowing when to say that, because you can say that at any point, but really you got to know when to say that in your season. So long story short, I agree. Timing is everything, and knowing when to go after and say those things is crucial. I agree. And so really, I have one question which we can just touch on real quick. I always like to touch on recruiting, but it's more of the challenges you faced of doing that. So I know you said that you found kids that you've went against 8 or 9 other coaches from just podunk town that you would be surprised that kid would be found. So like, how are you finding your athletes? What stands out to your athlete, or when you're looking for athletes? And then I think the other piece is what was a challenge that you faced when you maybe not from ever like when you first started, but maybe when you took the head coaching role over to now, when you're kind of over top in charge of all the recruiting. Maybe what's the challenge that you faced from then to now that now you can, it's not so much a challenge anymore.
Well, I think recruiting is always going to be a challenge. Especially now, I think a lot of kids, and I alluded to you before a little bit about kids sometimes can't honestly evaluate themselves. So I think a lot of times kids think that they should be playing at a higher level. Everybody wants to play Division I. I mean, I wanted to play Division I. I wasn't good enough. So there's that. There's always going to be the money aspect, the scholarship money and that sort of thing. My thing with recruiting has always been, I always wanted to try to find a qualified student, someone that, I knew that we were going to be able to get here and they were going to get, a 3.0 or better. They were going to graduate. It was important to them to graduate. But trying to find the right person, the right character traits that I'm looking for, because I think that having good chemistry in your program is very important. If you have poor chemistry, typically, you don't play well. And we talk more chemistry than we do culture. I don't know what culture means, but I do know what chemistry means. Uh, every team I've been a part of, when things were going well, the culture was great. When things weren't going so well, the culture stunk. But chemistry is, finding guys that are going to respect each other, not necessarily love each other or even like each other, but respect each other and respect what each person's role on the team is and their value that they bring. So trying to find guys that can come in and buy into that part, that's always a challenge. So you just have to identify those kids. And now, I think, and I've heard a lot of coaches allude to this, that, we're looking at parents more closely than we ever have, because, some folks are crazy. So, you've got to make sure that they're going to be, people that are going to be supportive of the program, whether their son's playing or not. And that's always been a challenge because, that's the way Coach Bailey kind of recruited kids, and that's the way I recruit kids. So that's always been kind of a challenge for us. And it's a fun challenge because you get to meet a lot of people along the way trying to identify those kids. And it's very rewarding when you get a bunch of them. And like my team right now, this is probably the closest knit team I've ever had. And we're going to need it. That's when things aren't going well, that's what you have to draw from. And that's why I think chemistry is so much more important because, that's kind of the fabric of your team. When I hear culture, it just makes me think that we're trying to create an atmosphere where everybody gets along and everybody likes everybody. Well, I just don't think that's realistic. But I think that what is realistic is everybody has to respect everybody. And, we look for guys that were captains of their team, that played on winning teams, that have some academic accolades in high school. Those are the kind of guys we look for because those guys have some substance to what they're doing. But like I said, that's always a challenge trying to find those kind of kids, and it's going to continue to be a challenge.
That may be. I've done a decent amount of these shows, right? I think, I don't know, we're somewhere in the mid 50s now. That may be one of my favorite things I've ever heard in terms of, because whenever I think about it, whenever I'm recruiting people, that's one of my biggest things is I talk, hey, you may not like each other. I mean, obviously there's a lot of pretext to it or context to this, leading up to it. But the idea is I'll get to a point where like, hey, our culture is going to be, we're going to be competitive and we're going to be good people. We're going to make the right choices and we're going to be a team. I'm looking for leaders and blah, blah, blah. They're kind of similar to what you're mentioning about how we want to be close knit. But I've always said chemistry or culture. And it's just interesting listening to you explain the difference in your own head, right, about chemistry versus culture. And that's probably a little bit more what I want whenever I should be explaining these things. I should be explaining more of a chemistry versus a culture because the culture develops itself based off of what you're doing and how your team maneuvers like every day, in the room, out of the room, community, whatever. But the chemistry is what matters because otherwise, like, you don't have anything else to follow up, right? If everybody hates each other, no chemistry, that's going to develop a bad culture, right? And so that may be one of my favorite things because I feel like that just fits how I speak to athletes so much about the culture will develop, but we want good chemistry. And it starts with you people, like your whatever, when I'm talking to the athlete, your type of, who you are, you fit that chemistry based off of these things. So I know I just wanted to say that was great. I appreciate that one. That was one of my favorites for sure. But that actually segues us really well into our final few questions. I only have like really 2 or 3 more for you. I have a fun one for you. These are the philosophical ones. Guys, if y'all still listen to this on YouTube, make sure you guys HTV, hit that bell, like, subscribe, all the 9 yards. If you guys are an audio listener, make sure you guys leave a review, say what you got to say, but say it with your chest because Coach and I want to hear it. These are some of my favorite questions, but I'm going to switch it up a little bit for you because You just talked about chemistry versus culture. So how do you build a successful chemistry? Which you kind of mentioned about, you're looking for these type of people, right? But but on the level of buy-in and mindset. So how do you getting them to buy in, to what you're building? Which I guess which is built to build a good culture, but obviously you're starting with chemistry. So how do you get them to buy into that?
Bunker mentality. We're all in it together, and it's like a family. And if we're going to preach that our program's a family, then we're going to be a family. And when you have family, you always have Uncle Chuck that says the wrong thing at Thanksgiving dinner that makes everybody mad and upset. Well, every team has an Uncle Chuck, but you still love Uncle Chuck. You just don't like what Uncle Chuck's doing right now. And you can't really say anything to Uncle Chuck because he's well within his right to do it. So you have to learn to accept it and get past it because Uncle Chuck brings value to the family.
Right.
So that's how we do it. I'm very straight up with it. My expectation is not for all you guys to love each other. My expectation is not for all you guys to even like each other. If it happens, great. My expectation is you're all going to respect each other. You're going to play for each other. You're going to play with each other, and you're going to care about each other. And when somebody goes down, everybody else better be able to come back over there and pick him up. And, that's just how we go about it. And it's, I say something along those lines every single day. So, I think it's a continuous, consistent message can be powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I put that in the wrestling. Care about each other, work for each other, do all this for each other, whether you like each other or not, you're going to respect each other.
Absolutely. That's the foundation of a team.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. I think that, without that, you're just a bunch of individuals playing a sport. You're not really a team, like you said.
Well, I told our guys Sunday, the strength of our team is the team. That's the strength of our team. It's not pitching, hitting, fielding. The strength of our team is the team. And, if that's going to be our strength, then we're only going to be as good as our weakest link on the field and off the field. So it's up to all of us to help him catch up.
Yeah, that's really good. I like that. I've talked to the girls literally today about how we're getting to a point in the season where, we have 6 weeks left or so in the season. A lot of competition left, but we've been doing this for 2.5 months. It's kind of like when you guys are getting to probably the end of April, early May time of the season, getting close to conference and nationals and whatever. And so I told them that, hey, we're at a point where we have, there's a lot of emotions running here. We've been together since day one for the last 7 months or however many months it's been. You guys are cutting weight. You've had wins, we've had losses. Your season's going the way you want it to, or it's not. There's a lot of emotions, but we have to understand that at the end of the day, we're a family. We're here for each other. Yes, we are. Wrestling is a selfish sport, but we're also here with a team to help us through these moments, right? And so kind of similar. I'm not going to dive into crazy, but that's kind of the same idea. I had to tell them that. And so, and knowing when to say that. And I think right now it was a good time because there was some animosity between a few wrestlers just because, you're wrestling each other every day. And one wrong move or one accident, right? And just like baseball, right? Even a pitcher and this guy, they might have some conversations in the locker room or weight room or whatever. And truly, you never know. A pitcher accidentally beams them in BP or something, right? And then you got into this little whatever you want to call it, not fight, but little, issue, and tempers flare. But you got to learn how to control it and know that at the end of the day, we have to push through it and be better.
Typically, we're coaching about 90 to 95% of type A personalities. So when you get a bunch of type A's together, there's going to be a little bit of friction every once in a while, and that's not always a bad thing. Everybody thinks it's not always a bad thing. It can be galvanizing if you play it right and you let it.
Right. I mean, but like you said about Uncle Chuck at that Thanksgiving, but it's like if you have siblings, you love each other, you guys can get along 5 days of the week, but there's going to be 2 where you guys are not on the same page, and so same idea, just maybe not blood, but what I'm saying. So I have 2 questions left for you on this side, but and I have this question just because I was going to skip it because I know I've been talking for a little while, but I'm intrigued here. you've found a lot of success. You've taken your team to 2 NCAA World Series. Like you've taken them to, and you've made appearances there. Like your first year, you were in like 24-8 in league play and took you guys to the MEC. Or I guess at that time, you guys won the title, and you were like coach of the year that year, whatever. Like you've had some success. And I know a lot of it does come down to that chemistry, but how do you build that successful program on the level of wins? And then how do you sustain that over time? How do you do it for all these years?
You got to love it. Number one, you have to have a passion for it. It can't be seasonal. It's got to be like every morning when you get up, whether it's April or August, that team's got to be the first thing on your mind. You got to work at it. You got to continually try to improve yourself, knowing that you're never going to be the all-knowing, but you're going to work to try to get a skill set that's going to be most beneficial to your situation and your type of players. And my solution for anytime something's not going right is we got to work harder at it. So I tell you that I told you before that I don't think kids can honestly self-evaluate as much as they used to be able to. I'm always in a constant state of self-evaluation. I'll play back conversations I've had with my players as soon as they leave to make sure that, okay, how did I say that? Did it come across, because the communication part is very important, especially now. But it has to be a passion. It can't be work. This can't be a job. It's a calling. It's a career. It just has to be, it has to be part of you. And, I think that when coaches, I'm sure, like I told you, I was a Steeler fan. I'm sure Mike Tomlin probably knew that, I'm getting stale. I need a recharge. I'm not the same guy I was 10 years ago. And, I can see that. I mean, it's, thank God I've not been to the point yet where I've had to get myself charged up and pumped up to, get ready for the season. I've yet to work a day in my life. So, I'm lucky. And I saw a quote the other day: if you can live your life and finally get tired of something you love doing, then you did the right thing. I think it just comes down to just being passionate about it, because being a Division II baseball coach, I'm not going to get rich doing this. But I get paid a really fair amount of money to,
be a full-time job.
play a game. My
Yeah.
dad still asks me when I'm going to get a real job. So he said, you
I
got an
know
awful
that.
lot of education for that. So, but I think that's the key. It's got to be a passion.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, you got to love what you do in order for you. I mean, really anything. It doesn't have to be coaching, but you have to love what you do to do it for years and years and years. So I'd agree with that. And so my final question for you is my favorite question, and it's actually the name of the show. It's why do you do this? What's your coach's why?
I like being around college kids. It keeps me young. I'm not young anymore, but I feel younger than what I am. My 18-year-old daughter taught me the 6'7" thing the other day, and I rolled that out for my guys, and they went nuts.
They loved it. Yeah, I'm sure they did. Yeah.
I like being around college age kids. I like being able to help kids. I like still having something where I'm in a competitive environment. I love the game of baseball. I just love baseball. I love everything about it.
It's beautiful. I will say it's
yeah.
a beautiful sport.
Yeah. So I've got a lot of whys. I've never had a why not.
Have they taught you this one? Have they taught you this one yet, your daughters?
Yeah, and I've got this one. Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
My girls taught me to clock it, so that right there was one of those that if the girls are here, they're like,
She keeps me to where I, can do it just enough to embarrass myself.
You know what? It's all right. It's just what it's like. I got kids, and so, You know, like when I showed them the 6'7", they thought it was great. And like I haven't done this part yet, but the girls, you know, I coach women, so it's called oh, she knows it. Yeah, clock it. Yeah. I coach women's wrestling, so the women, you know, the girls, you know, they're all in tune with it, and so I'm learning the, you know, this and slay and whatever else their verbiage is. So you're right though, it's fun, and it's different, but I can appreciate your why, and not having a why not is outstanding, and so I really appreciate that. My final question is the fun one of the day. Is and sometimes it's a hot question too. If you have, I mean, you'll understand why. But it's what state produces the best high school baseball?
I don't think there's probably one. I mean, Florida, Georgia, Texas, California, Louisiana. I mean, that's where most of the players come from, you know, the big leaguers, because of the weather. I mean, they can play all year round, and you know, they've never had to play in 32-degree weather with it spitting snow and a 10-mile-an-hour wind. But that's probably the states that produce the most. I wouldn't know the numbers, but Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Louisiana, Texas, California, Alabama, maybe. I don't know.
It's kind of just the coastal, pretty much the states
Yeah.
that stay warm year round.
Yeah.
Okay.
Places where I'd like to live. Yeah.
yeah. Maybe whenever you get done at West Virginia, maybe we can take a trip down south or something.
Well, it's below 20 here tonight, so.
Oh yeah, I understand. You guys been getting some pretty decent weather up there, right? Like, did you guys have some snow and stuff this week?
I mean, we've had a little bit, but
yeah, I guess I don't know what part of West Virginia you're in, but
we're like southwestern.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so I guess it's not as close to like PA as I thought, but okay, fair.
No, we're 3.5 hours from PA.
Gotcha. So you're down by like Bristol, kind of.
Yeah, we're closer to like Lexington, Kentucky.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's 25 degrees here right now, so I mean, I understand.
I'm not digging it.
But Coach, I appreciate you jumping on here, man. I love talking, for one, just in general to coaches, but you know, the sport of baseball always has a special place in my heart. And so I appreciate you taking the time to touch base today. So I really appreciate you, you know, jumping on the show today.
Well, I really enjoyed it. And anytime I can get a chance to talk about West Virginia State baseball, and baseball in particular, is always exciting for me. And I appreciate the interest, and I'm really, really glad to have done this.
Yeah, me too. I appreciate it. Hopefully you guys listen and also enjoyed this episode as well. There's a lot of gems in there, especially on the mental side. You know, there's a lot of things that hopefully you guys took from it. I wrote down a whole lot, so I know damn well I'm using some of this. So if you don't mind, I'm going to pull some of it from this and utilize it. But Coach, like I said, I appreciate you joining, guys. Thank you, and ladies out there who are listening. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching. But we'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.